My name is Sarah Mitchell, and after 12 years serving in the military, I thought coming home for Christmas would be the happiest moment of my life. Instead, 5 days before my flight, my stepdad sent a text that changed everything. "Don't bother coming. This family has moved on without you." I stared at those words, feeling nothing but a strange sense of relief. I typed back one word: "Fine." Then I turned off my phone. 5 days later, I woke up to 10 missed calls from family members who hadn't spoken to me in years, and one from a lawyer I'd never heard of. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. What that lawyer told me would flip my entire world upside down. The lawyer's message was brief but urgent. "Ms. Mitchell, you need to be at my office tomorrow at 2 p.m. for the reading of your mother's will. Your presence is legally required." My mother's will? My hands shook as I listened to the voicemail again. Nobody had told me Mom died. 3 years. She'd been gone 3 years while I was deployed in Afghanistan, and not one person in my family thought I deserved to know. The conference room at Martha Reeves and Associates was packed when I arrived. Every seat taken by relatives I hadn't seen since before my deployment. Aunts, uncles, cousins from both sides of the family. They all wore black, like they were still in mourning. At the head of the table sat Robert, my stepfather, with his biological son James beside him. They looked comfortable, confident even, shuffling through papers and whispering to each other. The moment I walked in, the room went silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me in my simple civilian clothes, jeans and a button-down shirt. I hadn't known to wear black. "What the hell is she doing here?" James stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Robert's face went from smug satisfaction to pure shock. You got my message. I told you not to come." "I'm not here for Christmas," I said, taking the only empty seat, directly across from them. "I'm here for my mother." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Relatives whispered behind their hands, some pointing at me, others shaking their heads. Robert's sister loud enough for everyone to hear. The nerve of her, showing up after abandoning poor Linda. Martha Reeves entered then, a dignified woman in her 60s carrying an old leather briefcase. She looked directly at me and nodded. "Good, we can begin." Before Martha could open her briefcase, Robert stood up, adjusting his expensive suit jacket. "Martha, I think there's been a mistake. Sarah isn't family anymore. She made that choice when she left." The words stung, but I'd heard worse. You see, I wasn't Robert's biological daughter. Mom married him when I was 8, after my real father died in a construction accident. From day one, Robert made sure I knew my place in his family. While James got everything handed to him, private schools, a BMW for his 16th birthday, full college tuition, I got lectures about not expecting handouts and reminders that I should be grateful for having a roof over my head. "She's not even real family," James added, that same sneer he'd perfected in high school. "Just some kid Mom felt sorry for." Martha looked at them calmly. "Sarah Mitchell is specifically named in the will. She has every legal right to be here." "Legal right?" Robert laughed bitterly. "She didn't even come to the funeral. 3 years, Martha. 3 years Linda was gone, and where was her precious daughter? Playing soldier in the desert." What they didn't mention, what they'd never admit, was that they deliberately didn't tell me Mom was sick. I found out later from her old friend Carol that Mom had been in hospice for 2 months. 2 months when I could have taken emergency leave, could have said goodbye. But every email I sent home got the same response from Robert. "Everything's fine. Your mother's fine. Focus on your duty." The last time I'd seen Mom was at the airport, the day I deployed. She'd hugged me so tight, whispered, "I'm so proud of you, baby girl. You're stronger than all of them combined." I thought she meant surviving the war. Now I wondered if she meant surviving this family. "Sarah chose her career over her mother," Robert announced to the room, playing to his audience. "She abandoned Linda when she needed her most, and now she shows up wanting money? It's disgusting." Several relatives nodded in agreement. Robert's brother muttered something about ungrateful children these days. Even some of Mom's relatives looked at me with disappointment. The narrative had been set. I was the absent daughter who'd chosen strangers in uniform over my dying mother. I stayed silent. In the military, you learn when to speak and when to let others reveal themselves. Robert was doing a fine job of the latter. Martha cleared her throat, but Robert wasn't finished with his performance. Linda was heartbroken, he continued, his voice cracking with practiced emotion. Every holiday, every birthday, she'd set a place for Sarah. And nothing, not even a phone call. That was a lie so bold it took my breath away. I'd called every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every birthday. Robert always answered, always said Mom was resting or not feeling up to talking. I'd sent letters, packages, flowers for Mother's Day. Where did they all go? Remember Mom's last birthday? James jumped in, sensing blood in the water. She kept asking where Sarah was. It was pathetic. My fingernails dug into my palms under the table. They'd held my mother's funeral while I was in Afghanistan, serving my country, and no one, not one person in this room, thought to send me a Red Cross message. I found out through Facebook 3 weeks after she was buried, from a distant cousin's posted photo of the headstone. That's enough, Martha said firmly. We're here to execute Linda Mitchell's last wishes, not to litigate family grievances. Family, Robert scoffed. Sarah made it clear we weren't her family when she enlisted. Couldn't wait to get away from us. He wasn't entirely wrong about that part. I had wanted to leave. After years of being treated like an unwelcome guest in my own home, the military offered something this family never did: respect earned through merit, not blood. While James failed out of his third college and moved back home at 25, I was earning commendations and rank through actual achievement. But none of that mattered to the people in this room. To them, I was the ungrateful adopted daughter who'd abandoned her sick mother for a uniform and a steady paycheck. They didn't know about the nights in Afghanistan when I'd stare at Mom's photo, planning all the things we'd do when I got home. They didn't know I'd already put in for early separation when I got that text from Robert 5 days ago, telling me not to come home for Christmas. The lawyer's call had changed everything. Whatever was in that will, whatever Mom had planned, it was important enough that Martha had tracked me down through military channels. Shall we begin? Martha asked again, pulling out a sealed envelope from her briefcase. Robert's eyes fixed on it like a hawk eyeing prey. Before we proceed, Martha said, setting down the sealed envelope, I need to make something clear. This is a legally binding document, properly witnessed and notarized. Any attempts to contest it will be met with the full force of my firm's resources. Robert shifted uncomfortably. The original will was straightforward. Everything to the surviving spouse. Linda and I agreed. There's a codicil, Martha interrupted, added 2 weeks before Linda's passing. The room erupted. James jumped up again. That's impossible. Mom wasn't in her right mind at the end. The cancer, the medications. Linda was of completely sound mind, Martha said coolly. I have affidavits from 2 attending physicians and the hospice director confirming her mental capacity. I watched Robert's face drain of color. Whatever he'd expected, this wasn't it. For 3 years he'd been living in Mom's house, the house she'd inherited from her parents, the house I'd grown up in. He'd probably already spent whatever savings she'd accumulated from her years as a financial advisor. And James? He'd been posting photos of expensive vacations and a new Mercedes on Instagram. Mom's life insurance money, no doubt. If I stayed silent, if I walked away now, they'd continue living off Mom's legacy. The house would eventually be sold to fund James's lifestyle. Mom's charity work, the scholarship fund she'd always talked about starting, none of it would happen. Everything she'd built would be dissolved into nothing. This is ridiculous, Robert said, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. Sarah hasn't been part of this family for years. She doesn't deserve... What Linda's daughter deserves, Martha said, emphasizing the word daughter, is exactly what Linda wanted her to have. The weight of those words settled over the room. Several relatives exchanged nervous glances. Robert's sister was no longer whispering. Even James had gone quiet, staring at that sealed envelope like it might explode. If you've ever been treated like an outsider in your own family, hit that like button. And if you want to know what happened when the will was finally read out loud, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Trust me, what comes next is something none of us saw coming. Let me know in the comments if you've ever dealt with family inheritance drama. Now, let me tell you what happened when Martha finally opened that envelope. You shouldn't be here, Robert said, turning to me directly. The lawyer invited me, I replied, keeping my voice level. You're not even real family, James spat. We'll see about that. See about what? Robert stood up, planting his hands on the table. You think you can waltz in here? I was summoned, I cut him off. By whose authority? By Linda's, Martha interjected. The room buzzed with whispers. Aunt Patricia, Mom's sister, leaned forward. Robert, what's going on? You said the will was simple. It is simple, Robert insisted, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Then why are you scared? I asked. I'm not scared of anything. Your hands are shaking. He clenched his fists. You have some nerve. I have every right to be here, I said. Rights? James laughed. You gave up your rights. Did I? When? When you left, Robert's voice cracked. I served my country. You abandoned your mother. You hid her illness from me. Gasps rippled through the room. Robert's sister grabbed his arm. Robert, what does she mean? She's lying, he said quickly, too quickly. I have the emails, I said. Every one where you said Mom was fine. Martha tapped the table. Perhaps we should proceed with the reading. Not until she leaves, James demanded. Then we'll be here all day, Martha replied. This is our family matter, Robert tried again. Which is why Sarah is here, Martha said. She's not family, James shouted. Your mother disagreed, Martha said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert slowly sat back down, his face red with fury and something else. Fear? James kept standing, fists clenched, looking between his father and Martha like a cornered animal. Shall I open the envelope now? Martha asked, her fingers already breaking the seal. Wait, Robert said desperately. Just wait. But Martha was already pulling out the documents inside. Martha pulled out not one, but 3 documents from the envelope. The first was clearly the will, formal, typed, multiple pages. The second appeared to be some kind of letter in Mom's handwriting. But the third was in a separate plastic sleeve, like evidence in a court case. Before I read the codicil, Martha said, arranging the papers carefully, I should mention that Linda came to see me privately, without Robert. Robert's jaw tightened. When? 3 weeks before she passed. She was very specific about her instructions. I watched Robert's face cycle through emotions, confusion, anger, then a dawning realization. The day she said she was going to her sister's. She did go to her sister's, Aunt Patricia said. I drove her to Martha's office myself. The room stirred with interest. Family members who'd been whispering among themselves now leaned in, sensing drama unfolding. Linda was concerned, Martha continued, her voice measured, about certain decisions being made without her knowledge. She wanted to ensure her wishes were properly documented. What decisions? James demanded. Dad had power of attorney. Medical power of attorney, Martha clarified. Not financial. Robert stood up abruptly. This is inappropriate. Linda wasn't well. The medications. I have a video recording of our meeting, Martha said calmly, pulling out an iPad. Linda insisted on it. She wanted to make sure there could be no questions about her mental state or her intentions. The blood drained from Robert's face. You recorded her? She recorded herself. She was quite insistent. Said she wanted Sarah to hear her voice again, To know that these were her words, her choices. My throat tightened. Mom had been thinking of me, planning for me, even as she was dying. While Robert was telling me everything was fine, she was putting legal protections in place. That's That's not standard procedure, Robert stammered. No, Martha agreed. But Linda was never one for standard procedures, was she? She always said she learned to document everything after her first marriage. Trust but verify, she used to say. Your mother, Martha said, looking directly at me, was worried about you. She knew you were deployed, knew you couldn't be reached easily. She also knew, Martha paused, choosing her words carefully, that certain family members might not prioritize contacting you. That's an accusation, Robert said sharply. It's a statement of concern Linda expressed, Martha replied. She specifically asked me to locate you through military channels if necessary. She didn't even know where Sarah was stationed, James protested. She knew exactly where I was, I said quietly. We emailed every week. That's impossible, Robert said. I managed her email when she got too sick. He stopped, realizing what he'd just admitted. The room went very still. You managed her email? Aunt Patricia asked slowly. Robert, did you read Linda's messages? I was helping her, he said defensively. She could barely type. But she could record a video? I asked. Martha pulled something else from her briefcase, a small stack of printed emails. Linda brought these to our meeting, emails from Sarah that were never answered. She found them in the deleted folder. My chest tightened. All those unanswered messages. All those times I'd wondered if Mom had forgotten about me. She also brought these, Martha continued, producing another stack. Emails from Robert to various family members sent from Linda's account, saying Sarah had chosen not to come home. Gasps echoed through the room. Uncle Pete, Mom's brother, stood up. Robert, you told us Sarah didn't want to see Linda. You said she'd written Linda off. I was protecting Linda, Robert said, but his voice was losing strength. Sarah's visits would have upset her. Or, Martha said, they would have interfered with certain financial arrangements you were making. She tapped the third document, still in its plastic sleeve. This is a copy of a loan application filed 2 days after Linda entered hospice for $200,000 using the house as collateral. It required both spouses' signatures. Linda signed it, Robert said quickly. Did she? Martha asked. Or did someone sign for her? Robert stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. How dare you imply— I'm not implying anything, Martha said evenly. I'm simply presenting facts that Linda wanted disclosed. This is character assassination, Robert's voice boomed through the conference room. He turned to address the entire family, playing to his audience. I took care of Linda for 2 years. Where was Sarah? Where was the devoted daughter when her mother needed chemotherapy, when she needed someone to hold her hand through radiation? In Afghanistan, I said quietly, serving our country, following orders. Following orders, Robert repeated mockingly. That's always your excuse, isn't it? You chose strangers over family. You chose a uniform over your mother. Robert, Aunt Patricia warned, but he was building momentum. Do you know what Linda said every night? He pointed at me, his fingers shaking with rage or performance. She'd ask, why doesn't Sarah call? And I'd have to make excuses for you. I'd have to lie to spare her feelings. You deleted my emails, I said. You abandoned her. He slammed his hand on the table. Several relatives jumped. You left a sick woman to chase some misguided hero complex, playing soldier while your mother was dying. That's enough, Uncle Pete said, but Robert wasn't done. She wasn't even here for Linda's last breath, he announced to the room. Her mother died calling her name. And where was Sarah? 10,000 miles away, choosing duty over family. The words hit like physical blows. Some relatives were crying now. Others looked at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. James smirked from his seat, enjoying the show. Sarah didn't even know Linda was dying, Aunt Patricia said suddenly. I asked you repeatedly if you'd told her, Robert. You always said you had. I was protecting Linda from disappointment, Robert said, but his righteous anger was starting to crack. Or protecting your loan application, Martha said quietly. The room erupted, family members talking over each other, some defending Robert, others demanding explanations. Through it all, Robert kept his eyes on me, and in them I saw something beyond anger. I saw fear, real fear. Should we watch the video now? Martha asked, her finger hovering over the iPad screen. Linda was very clear about when it should be played. James stood up, his designer suit catching the light. This is ridiculous. Mom wasn't in her right mind. The cancer had spread to her brain. That's a lie, Aunt Patricia said sharply. The cancer never reached her brain. I was at every oncology appointment. You don't know everything, James said dismissively. Dad and I were her primary caregivers. While you were living rent-free in her house, Uncle Pete added. Both of you. James laughed, an ugly sound. And what? Sarah deserves something for sending a few emails? She's not even real family. She's just some charity case Mom took in. James, one of the cousins said, shocked. But James was on a roll. Mom felt sorry for her, that's all. Took in the poor orphan girl, gave her a place to stay. And how did Sarah repay that kindness? She ran off the first chance she got. To serve our country, Martha said. To escape, James corrected. Because she knew she didn't belong here. Never did, never will. He turned to me with a sneer I remembered from countless family dinners. What do you even want, Sarah? Money? Is that it? The poor soldier girl needs a handout? Careful, James, Martha warned. Or what? You'll show us some video of my dying mother being manipulated by a lawyer? Please. He pulled out his wallet, made a show of counting bills. Here's $5,000. Take it and go. It's more than you deserve. Then he threw the money on the table. The bills scattered across the polished wood. The room went silent, everyone staring at the cash like it was something poisonous. That's generous of you, I said calmly, not touching the money, considering you've been spending Mom's life insurance for 3 years. That money was for funeral expenses, a funeral you didn't tell me about. You wouldn't have come anyway. I wasn't given the choice. Robert stepped forward. Take the money, Sarah. Take it and leave. You have no place here. I looked around the room, at the relatives who'd believed Robert's lies, at the cousins who'd unfriended me on social media, at the family that had erased me. Then I looked at Martha, who gave me the slightest nod. I think, I said, we should hear what Mom had to say. Can you believe the audacity? If this is making your blood boil, you're not alone. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about standing up to family bullies. And stick around, because the will reading is about to expose secrets that Robert desperately wanted to keep buried. Comment below. Would you have walked out or stayed to fight? Now, let me tell you what was in my mother's video message. Martha turned the iPad toward the room and pressed play. My mother's face filled the screen, and my heart stopped. She was thinner than I remembered, wearing a soft blue cardigan I'd sent her for her birthday. But her eyes, those warm brown eyes, were clear and determined. My name is Linda Mitchell, she began, her voice stronger than her frail appearance suggested. Today is November 15th, 2021. I am of sound mind and body, despite my terminal diagnosis. I'm recording this because I need my daughter Sarah to know the truth. Robert reached for the iPad. Turn it off. No, Martha said firmly, and several family members echoed her. Mom continued. I know Robert hasn't told Sarah I'm dying. I found the deleted emails, the unreturned calls. I know he's been telling everyone that Sarah abandoned me. That's a lie. Gasps filled the room. Aunt Patricia covered her mouth with her hand. Sarah doesn't know I'm sick because Robert has been intercepting our communication. He has his reasons. A loan he needs me to sign, life insurance policies he's already spending in his mind. But I won't let him steal my daughter's inheritance along with her chance to say goodbye. This is manipulated, Robert shouted. She was on morphine. But Mom kept talking. To be clear, I am leaving 60% of my estate to my daughter, Sarah Mitchell. This includes the house at 452 Maple Drive, which was my parents' home and will now be hers. Robert and James will receive 40% combined, which is more than generous considering Robert's recent unauthorized loan against my property. The room exploded. 60%? James screamed. She's not even blood! Martha paused the video. There's more, but I should read the actual will first. She picked up the formal document. The last will and testament of Linda Marie Mitchell, executed on November 15, 2021, hereby revokes all previous wills and codicils. She read through the legal language, but the key points were clear. The house went to me. The remaining life insurance went to me. Mom's investment accounts, her jewelry, even her car, all to me. Robert got Mom's pension survivor benefits and some bonds. James got $20,000 and Mom's blessing to make something of himself. This is fraud, Robert shouted. Sarah manipulated her. Sarah was in Afghanistan, Martha said coolly, verified by military records. She had no contact with Linda after Robert began intercepting communications in September 2021. Then you manipulated her, Martha smiled thinly. I simply followed my client's wishes. Everything was witnessed by Dr. Harrison and Dr. Patel from the hospice, plus a court-appointed advocate for terminal patients. Would you like to see their affidavits? Martha resumed the video. Mom looked directly at the camera, as if she could see me through time and space. Sarah, my brave girl, I know you're wondering why I didn't tell you myself. Robert monitors everything now, my phone, my email, even my visitors. But Patricia and I found a way. She brought me to Martha's office while Robert thought I was getting treatment. You lied to me, Robert accused Aunt Patricia. Like you lied to all of us, she shot back. Mom's voice continued. I need everyone to understand something. Sarah is my daughter in every way that matters, not by blood, but by choice. When her father died, she could have become bitter, angry. Instead, she became strong. She served our country with honor, while Robert and James, she paused, choosing her words, took a different path. Turn it off, James lunged for the iPad, but Uncle Pete blocked him. Robert, Mom said, and her tone changed, became harder. I know about the loan application. I know you forged my signature. I've instructed Martha to pursue criminal charges if you contest this will. Robert's face went white. Several relatives gasped. I also know about the money you took from my retirement account, $43,000, supposedly for my treatment, but the receipts show otherwise. James's Mercedes, your gambling debts, that ridiculous boat you bought last summer while I was in chemotherapy. Mom, James whispered, as if she could hear him. James, Mom continued, you're 35 years old. You've never held a job for more than 6 months. You've lived off me your entire adult life. The $20,000 I'm leaving you is a chance to start over. Don't waste it. She looked back at the camera, and tears ran down her weathered cheeks. Sarah, I'm so proud of you. You became the woman I always hoped you'd be. Strong, independent, honorable. The house is yours, baby. Come home when you're ready. Make it a place of love again, not the prison Robert turned it into. I want you to know, Mom's voice grew stronger, that I'm adding one condition to Robert and James's inheritance. They must vacate the house within 30 days of the will reading. If they contest any part of this will, they forfeit their entire portion, which will go to the Veterans Foundation in Sarah's name. The video had one more minute. Mom held up a photograph. It was of her and me at my basic training graduation. This is my daughter, she said firmly. This is my legacy. And Robert, if you're watching this, know that I forgave you for many things, but keeping my daughter from saying goodbye, that's unforgivable. The screen went dark. The room sat in stunned silence. I stood up slowly, pulling out my phone. Martha, I'd like to formally accept the terms of my mother's will. You can't do this, Robert shouted, but his voice had lost its power. I opened my banking app, showing the screen to Martha. I'm prepared to pay the property taxes immediately. I understand they're 3 months overdue. Robert's mouth fell open. How did you? Public records, I said simply. You haven't paid them since Mom died. Too busy spending her money on other things. Martha slid a stack of documents across the table. These are the transfer papers. Once signed, the house is legally yours, effective immediately. I signed each page with steady hands, the same hands that had signed deployment papers, that had held rifles, that had saluted fallen comrades. When I finished, I looked at Robert and James. You have 30 days to vacate. That's November 20th. This is our home, James protested. No, I said calmly. It was my grandparents' home, then my mother's home. Now it's my home. You were guests who overstayed their welcome. Where are we supposed to go? Robert demanded. I pulled out a business card from my wallet, my military JAG lawyer. My attorney can discuss rental agreements if you'd like to stay as tenants. Market rate for a 4-bedroom house in this neighborhood is $2,800 a month. You want us to pay you rent? James was incredulous. Or you can find somewhere else to live. Your choice. Sarah, Aunt Patricia said softly, are you sure about this? Mom was sure, I replied. That's enough for me. Martha pulled out more papers. There's also the matter of the fraudulent loan. The bank has been notified that Linda's signature was forged. They'll be pursuing separate action. You can't prove that, Robert said weakly. Actually, Martha said, Linda provided a handwriting sample to a forensic analyst before she passed. She wanted to make sure you couldn't steal any more from Sarah's inheritance. Uncle Pete stood up. Robert, I think you should leave, now. This isn't over, Robert said, grabbing his coat. Yes, I said quietly, it is. You kept me from saying goodbye to my mother. You stole 3 years of grief from me. But you can't steal her love. That was always mine. James threw the $5,000 back in his wallet, glaring at me with pure hatred. You'll regret this. No, I said. I'll heal from this. As Robert and James headed for the door, Martha called out, Mr. Mitchell, don't forget. Any attempt to remain in the property past the 30 days, any damage to the house, any missing items, and you forfeit your inheritance entirely. Robert stopped but didn't turn around. His shoulders were shaking with rage. Oh, and Robert, I added, Mom's wedding ring, the one that belonged to my grandmother, I'll need that back. He spun around. That's mine. We were married. Check the will, Martha said. All jewelry specifically goes to Sarah, including the wedding ring that belonged to Sarah's maternal grandmother. I don't have it, he said. Then you have 48 hours to find it, Martha replied, or we add theft to the fraud charges. After they left, the room remained quiet. Then one by one, relatives began approaching me. Some apologized for believing Robert's lies. Others simply hugged me. Aunt Patricia was crying. We should have known, she said. Linda talked about you constantly. She was so proud. Robert always had an excuse for why you couldn't visit, why you didn't call. We should have questioned it. He was convincing, I said. He convinced me I wasn't welcome. Uncle Pete shook his head. Your mother would be proud of how you handled this, like a true soldier. Like her daughter, I corrected. Martha handed me a small key. This is for Linda's safety deposit box. She wanted you to have it privately after everything was settled. I pocketed the key, wondering what other secrets Mom had protected. There's one more thing, Martha said, pulling out a final envelope. Linda wrote you a letter. She asked me to give it to you personally, not to read it in front of everyone. I took the envelope with trembling hands. My name was written across it in Mom's careful script. The house will need to be legally transferred, utilities switched to your name, Martha continued. I can handle all of that if you'd like. Thank you, I said, for everything, for finding me. Your mother was a remarkable woman, Martha said. She knew exactly what she was doing. She protected you even when she couldn't reach you. As the relatives filed out, several asked if I'd be moving back to town. Yes, I said. I'm done running. Mom wanted me to come home, and I'm finally ready. The last to leave was Aunt Patricia. Sunday dinners, she said. Linda always hosted Sunday dinners. Maybe you could continue that tradition? I'd like that, I said, and meant it. 3 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of my childhood home, watching Robert and James load the last of their belongings into a rental truck. They'd found an apartment across town, a two-bedroom unit that cost more than the rent I'd offered them. Pride, it seemed, was expensive. The neighborhood had been buzzing with gossip since the will reading. Robert's reputation as the devoted widower had crumbled. 3 families from Mom's church reached out to say they'd also noticed discrepancies in stories Robert told about my absence. The church ladies who'd brought casseroles during Mom's illness now crossed the street when they saw him. James lost his job at the car dealership the week after the will reading. Turns out his boss was a veteran who didn't appreciate how James had treated a service member. Bad for business, he'd said, according to the town gossip. But the real justice came from an unexpected source. The bank's fraud investigation revealed Robert had taken out 3 credit cards in Mom's name after her death. Federal charges were pending. His lawyer, not Martha obviously, was expensive. That 40% inheritance would barely cover his legal fees. I'd already started renovating Mom's room, turning it back into the sunny space I remembered from childhood. Robert had painted it a depressing gray, but underneath, the yellow walls Mom loved were still there, just covered up, like everything else he'd tried to hide. The safety deposit box had contained more than money. There were photos from my deployment that I'd sent her, each one carefully labeled with dates and locations, letters I'd written that Robert had intercepted, and a journal where she'd documented every lie Robert told, every deleted email she'd discovered, every day she'd waited for me to call. "I know you'll come home," she'd written in the last entry. "And when you do, you'll understand that love isn't about blood or marriage certificates. It's about choosing each other, again and again, even when the world tries to tear you apart." I'd also found her life insurance policy, the real one, not the one Robert had been collecting on, but a separate policy she'd taken out years ago with me as the sole beneficiary. $500,000, enough to establish the Linda Mitchell Veterans Foundation, providing housing assistance for female veterans. Robert drove past one last time that evening, slowing down as he passed the house. I stood on the porch, holding Mom's favorite coffee mug, the one that said, "World's Best Mom." He looked at me through the car window, and for a moment I saw him for what he really was, a small, bitter man who tried to steal a legacy he could never earn. I raised the mug in a mock toast. He drove away. The first Sunday dinner in my reclaimed home brought unexpected guests. 12 people showed up, including 3 of my old high school friends who'd reached out after hearing the real story. They'd all believed Robert's version of events, but now they wanted to make amends. "We should have known," my friend Katie said, helping me set the table with Mom's good china. "You were never the type to abandon anyone." I'd learned to forgive quickly in the military. Holding on to anger was like carrying extra weight on a long march. It only slowed you down. These people had been lied to, manipulated by a master con artist who'd had 3 years to perfect his story. What I couldn't forgive was the time stolen from me. 3 years of grieving I'd never gotten to do properly. The military had offered me bereavement leave when I finally learned of Mom's death, but by then, what was the point? The funeral was over, the grave already weathered. So I created my own closure. I visited Mom's grave every morning for a month, telling her about Afghanistan, about the soldiers I'd served with, about the pride I'd felt wearing my uniform. I told her about finding her letters, about the house restoration, about the foundation in her name. "I met someone," I told her one morning, placing fresh sunflowers on her headstone. "Another veteran. She runs a nonprofit for homeless vets. We're partnering with the foundation." The transformation wasn't just in the house or my life. It rippled outward. Aunt Patricia started questioning other stories Robert had told over the years. She discovered he'd been siphoning money from their father's estate too, claiming expenses that never existed. Another lawsuit was brewing. James tried reaching out once, sending a text asking if we could start over. I responded with a simple no. Some bridges, once burned, weren't meant to be rebuilt. But the most significant change came from an unexpected source. Martha called me one afternoon with news. 3 other families have come forward. Apparently, Robert pulled similar schemes with 2 previous wives. They want to know if you'll testify. Absolutely, I said without hesitation. The local newspaper picked up the story. Local veteran exposes inheritance fraud ran on the front page. The reporter asked if I wanted to comment on Robert's claim that I was being vindictive. I'm not being vindictive, I told her. I'm being factual. He stole from a dying woman and tried to steal from her daughter. That's not vindication, that's just truth. 6 months have passed since that day in Martha's office. The house is alive again, filled with the sound of Sunday dinners and support group meetings for female veterans. Mom's portrait hangs in the living room, right where she always wanted it, watching over the space she loved. Robert's trial starts next month. James moved to another state, telling everyone he's starting fresh. Maybe he is. That $20,000 Mom left him might have been the push he needed, though I doubt it. Some people are professional victims, and James wore that title like a badge of honor. But this story isn't about them anymore. It's about boundaries and the power of truth. Robert thought he could erase me from my mother's life, but love leaves evidence. Every saved letter, every documented lie, every video message, they all testified to a bond that couldn't be deleted or destroyed. Setting boundaries isn't about revenge. It's about finally choosing yourself. For years, I'd accepted being treated as less than, believing maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't real family. But Mom knew better. She saw me for who I was, not the orphan girl who needed charity, but her daughter who deserved protection. The house is mine now, legally and emotionally. But more than that, I've reclaimed my story. The narrative Robert crafted, the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her dying mother, has been replaced with the truth. A daughter who loved so deeply that even an ocean and a war couldn't break that connection. If you're reading this because someone in your family has made you feel like you don't belong, know this. Legal documents don't define family, but they can protect you from those who would deny your place in it. Document everything. Trust your instincts. And never let anyone steal your story. Mom was right. Love isn't about blood. It's about choosing each other, again and again. Even when they try to erase you. Even when they say you don't belong. Even when coming home seems impossible. Come home anyway. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Subscribe for more stories about everyday people finding their power in unexpected ways. And remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well and letting the truth speak for itself. What boundaries do you need to set in your life? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And to those of you still fighting for your place in your family, you belong. You've always belonged.